We're joined now by Odaro Aisien, the Deputy Director of Voter Education at electoral body INEC. Also with us is Samson Itodo, Executive Director, Yaga Africa. Thank you, both of you gentlemen, for joining us on Newsnight. Let me begin with you, INEC. I mean, you are the ones organizing this buy and rerun elections. Well, this has been described as a litmus test for INEC that hopefully can bring back the confidence of the electorate in INEC's capacity to deliver free and fair elections. Tell us about your preparation. How prepared, how ready is INEC, and are there any areas of concern?
Well, thank you very much. The preparations are very much in place. The core aspects of the preparations have to do with logistics and technology. And these have been taken care of very well, very effectively. The operations department has undertaken all requisite deployments pertaining to the elections. And regarding technology, of course, all of the BVAS units to be used for the elections have been deployed to their required location. So things are very much in place in these respects.
Well, and for Itodo, let's come to you quickly here, because we know you and other colleagues of yours in the civil society, specifically looking at elections, had a review of the last election. Perhaps let's start talking about the key expectations for INEC.
Well, thank you very much. The voters who will show up at the polling units tomorrow expect that, one, polling units will open early to allow people cast their vote, that there won't be logistical challenges, given that this is a by-election and a rerun election. Even though it's spread across 28 states, the voters expect that the elections will commence early. The polling units will open early, and there won't be any logistical issues. Voters also expect that the technological devices that will be used for accreditation, and in this case BVAS, will function optimally so that the process can be seamless. Voters also expect that when they show up at the polling units tomorrow, there won't be pre-filled result sheets like we observed in the last elections in November, in particular Kogi State, where there were result sheets that were filled before accreditation and voting. We expect that that will not be the case tomorrow. Now, the voters also expect that tomorrow the security agencies will provide security for INEC officials to deploy materials from the racks to the polling units, but also secure voters and not allow thugs prevent voters from accessing polling units to cast their votes or disrupting elections. Because we note that there's a background of insecurity in some of the states where we will have these elections. And so we hope that just like the security agencies have assured the voters in those states that they are on top of the situation, we expect that the centers will be secured tomorrow. But by and large, from us at Yaga Africa, we are satisfied with the level of preparations we've seen from INEC in the build-up to this election. What is more critical is what happens on the field, hoping that there's enough oversight on the officials who are out there on the field, so they, one, comply with the guidelines, but secondly, not engage in acts that undermine the integrity of the election.
Great, very well put. Odaro, you heard Samson Itodo there. Let me add to those questions raised, and I must say they're not rhetorical questions on the part of election observers. Some Nigerians are saying, look, has INEC justified the resources and experience at its disposal, especially on the issue of BVAS? You pointed out that, you mentioned that earlier. Will BVAS, will it be used? Is it going to be sacrosanct? And they're also saying INEC should not rely on manual voting anymore. INEC should deepen the use of technology. What say you to some of these concerns?
Well, thank you very much. Of course, BVAS will be used, as has been the case through the course of all the more recent elections. Regarding all of these, reforms or alterations you alluded to, the Commission is considering all of this. But just now, the voting will proceed as it did during the last general election. There'll be beavers, and beavers will be used, and of course there'll be accreditation, which will be undertaken just as it was, during the last the general election.
Is there a backup plan? I mean, will manual voting end up being a last resort? I'd like you to address that. And on the issue of voter education, I mean, you are deputy director there, voter education. Some are saying, look, voter education totally non-existent.
Well, the Commission has undertaken publicity campaigns for voters consistently on a nationwide basis. As you know, we have state offices all over the country. So at every location, in every state where these elections are holding, I think all requisite measures have been adopted regarding publicity and voter education.
What are you telling them?
Well, all of the requisite information, the dates of the election, what they need to know, the basics of the elections, pertaining to the elections. And I think voters are well informed as far as these elections are concerned.
Okay, I'd like to bring in Samson again, and he's, I think INEC is slightly lucky getting to hear from Samson and Yaga saying that INEC seem to be prepared for this. But the big conversation now, Samson, or the big worry will be the issue of security. The police is already speaking that some of these materials will be airlifted, and knowing full well that leading up to this election, just less than 24 hours, we've experienced some form of security concerns. What are you reading in some of these places?
Well, as of this evening, we can confirm, based on our observers that are on the field, that the sensitive materials have been deployed across the states. Our observers have also reported that in states like Plateau, in Ebonyi, in Yobe, we've observed the deployment of sensitive materials, and those materials were deployed with security. If you follow elections very well, the build-up to the elections, everything goes on well. But what happens beginning tomorrow morning is what should be of utmost concern, to Nigerians and to the voters in those places. I think on the part of the security agencies, especially in places like Plateau where you had security issues, they seem to have curtailed any incidents of pre-election violence. There is deployment that, as we have seen across the state, and our expectations are very high that we won't have incidents of violence in the course of this process. But when you look at the management of election security across the different elections, there are three things that we have to put on the table. And this begins with how, the officials on the field uphold integrity and transparency in managing the process. We know what happens overnight. And let's not, ignore the fact that even though these are rerun and by-elections, they are competitive races. They are competitive races. So the shenanigans of politicians will not be limited in this particular election, given that this election will be determined by simple majority. So one vote will make a significant difference. One vote can actually elect a senator into the National Assembly or into the House of Reps. So the politicians are mindful of this. And they are going to launch, tonight and tomorrow, trying to compromise election officials, trying to compromise security agencies, but also trying to buy votes tomorrow. And this is where security agencies need to keep, their satellite on what happens tonight in those racks where those materials are, to prevent incidents where result sheets will be completed before accreditation and voting. And that incident should not repeat itself tomorrow. But you also see vote buying, across the last elections that we had. And some of these, infractions, happened in the presence of security agencies. So we expect that tomorrow, if politicians deploy money to polling units and try to convert polling units to marketplaces, The security agencies should reprimand them, arrest, and ensure there is prosecution, of those defaulters. But also on the part of the Electoral Commission, I think it's also important that the issues relating to the transparency of the results collation and transmission process is upheld, because as we have also seen, in previous elections, we've seen how ward collation officers and local government collation officers have mismanaged the collation process and have undermined, the election. So INEC in the headquarters needs to keep an eye on those officials that it has on the field, so they don't rubbish all the efforts that have been made in the build-up to this election to ensure that this election meets the integrity test. So we will be watching tomorrow to see whether this rerun election or the by-election meets the integrity test, in view of the fact that some of these elections that will hold tomorrow was as a result of the desperation of political actors or negligence and mismanagement of the process at different levels by INEC officials.
Right. Aisien, in your response to my question earlier as to your readiness, it's not enough to say, look, INEC is ready. I did ask you about, some of your areas of concern. I'm not sure you've responded to that. What are your areas of concern? And you heard what Itodo said there about, ward collation officers and local government officials of INEC, and the tendency to want to, scuttle the process. What is INEC doing? What steps have you, taken? What measures have you put in place to ensure that those loopholes are plugged effectively? And what's your level of engagement with the police? Also?
Well, thank you very much. So I think your question is basically security related.
Right.
Regarding security, there's a committee which deals with election security. It's called the ICCES, that's the ICCES. And that's the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security. So, most of the key security agencies in the country are members. So it's a collaborative sort of endeavor between the Commission and these agencies. The IGP is, of course, a member of the committee, the NSA, all of the armed forces, paramilitary groups, the civil defense, and so on. So the ICCES has done everything necessary, has left no stone unturned regarding security-related preparations, and this applies nationwide. Obviously, there's information I can't divulge to you or to the public regarding all of this, but things are very much in place.
Yeah, but those areas of concern, unless you're telling us that INEC does not have any challenges, maybe in terms of logistics, for example. You've had to, in the past, rely on logistics transporters to move some of these sensitive materials. Will that be repeated this time, or any lessons learned from the last time that would not be repeated?
Yes, of course. The terrains of these different environments vary quite markedly. So according to the terrain, we've adapted. You have some environments which are more or less, which are coastal, some are riverine. In some areas you have, very difficult topography and so on. But as the case may be, the Commission has adapted requisitely. Talking about security again, of course, there are many hot spots which have been identified by the Commission and by ICCES, and whatever is necessary is being done. But I can't divulge security-related information.
Well, it's understandable. I think at this point, I would like to thank you, gentlemen, both for your time. Odaro, Aisien, the Deputy Director of Voter Education at INEC, and Samson Itodo, who is the Executive Director of the civil society organization, Yaga Africa.